Dun 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 dun. Dun dun dun. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is TPIM SR Live. I'm your host, True Powers Mine. I want to thank the Most High for allowing me yet again another opportunity to get on this broadcast and tell it like it is. Today, in fact, I might just do that right off the bat. I want to reach out to Judge Joe Brown or Dr. Short and kind of talk about what's going on as far as reopening Tennessee, reopening the country in general. Now that it's been identified that this virus is kind of disproportionately affecting at-risk populations, as they say, or I like to say traditionally disenfranchised, discriminated, oppressed populations. Now on something we just want to back up and this real, because once again, the right people are dying. The right people are dying. Brother Kenneth, welcome to the show. RWP, welcome to the show. Peace and power. Peace and power to both. All right. So as you guys can see on the screen, let me get this in frame there. Sacrifice the week. Reopen Tennessee. See, I told you a couple of shows ago, this virus, after the analysis is done, is concluded, it's going to be beneficial for those who desire the culture of death economy to continue. You know, the economy that grinds up children. You know, the economy that sticks old people in nursing homes to begin with. This is the culture of death that I speak on. With that being said, let's give Judge Joe a call. Let's just do it like that. Because I don't want to get carried away on a rant of my own. So we'll call up Judge. Dun, 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 dun.
This is Joe Brown. Please leave your message.
Oh, they're both probably preoccupied. I forget what is today. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Who knows? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Hold on. I got what time is it? Around lunchtime? Well, let's get a street. Hold on. Let's get a street. Okay, well, that's not. We're not getting a street report. Apparently, we're not talking. Okay. I see what's going on here. Hold on 1 second, y'all. Hold on 1 second. You know what? I could turn this into a science show. Dwight Jr., Ed Dwight Jr. Let me refresh my memory before I give him a call. Yes. You know, we're gonna call it an astronaut test pilot. Hopefully, we'll call it too late in the day. Hello, Edward. This is Patrick with TPIM SR Live Special Report. I called you a couple months ago. I was wanting to get you on the show to talk about your accomplishments as being a test pilot. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to see, do you have a few moments to talk with us?
Well, I'll take a few moments. We're right in the middle of a big move here, and we're really kind of busy right now. I mean, go ahead if I can answer a question for you or something.
Yeah. when you was coming up back in the day, how difficult was it for a man of color to actually achieve what you achieved as far as being a test pilot, the officer in the military?
Well, I I never looked at life that way about whether things were going to be tough or. I mean, I was living in the universe from Kansas City, Missouri. I mean, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, it was breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you just fine.
Yeah. No, I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, and it was segregated.
Right.
And there was a lot of things we could not do, but I had a great mom, and she never let me worry about all that stuff. It was all there, and she managed to spend a lot of time teaching me and the girls that we could do anything anybody else could do. And I just and I looked at life like that, and I went to Catholic schools all the way through, so I had white teachers and integrated Bishop Ward High School over there in Kansas City, Kansas, and I went to a white school, and I just, when I saw segregation or anything like that, I just figured out what could I do to beat it, and so I just took it as I never got angry about anything that was going on. It was just the way it was, and even though there were people standing in your way to get things done, I just had to spend a little time figuring out how to get around it. That's what I did.
I love that attitude. So in other words, you didn't have that poisonous mindset to begin with, like, I can't do this because. Instead, you had the mindset, I can do this because.
No, I never looked at life like that, Mom. From the time I was born, Mom told all of us that that there wasn't anything we could not do. There was not one thing that we couldn't do, and so that's how I approach life. And if somebody's standing in the way, and the other aspect of it is you gotta sit down and figure out what the rules are. And I learned that really early. What the limitations were. And to run up to the edge, close to the edge of that limitation as I possibly could. And I found out that by doing it, there was a whole lot of stuff about white men, what white men won't let you do. And I sit down and figure out what I had to sit down and figure out what white men were about, and to see what their limitations were. And I looked at how they acted, how they reacted to things, stuff like that, and I found out how I could work around it. And my best way of working around it was doing things better than they did, and that was the thing that bothered them because they didn't understand, because they were taught prejudice, and they said, "Wait a minute, something's wrong with this situation because that guy is doing what I can do, but he's doing it better." Mm-hmm. And so they came to the conclusion that I wasn't really black.
Oh my God!
That dude's been poisoned by somebody, and he runs out thinking he's a white guy. and that's the way it was. I went out for football, and I weighed 104 pounds when I went out for football, and I ended up by junior year I was on a varsity. I mean, I beefed up to 118 pounds by then.
So
and I was a star of the football team. You know what I mean? And when I went to high school, at the high school I went to didn't have a track team. When I went there, and and the coaches saw that I was pretty fast on football, on the football team, so he created a track team around me, and so I ran 7 events, and we started out. We had about 8 guys because all the white guys I was around, they weren't thinking about running it just wasn't something that was playing football made you a star.
Right.
Playing basketball and
A hero.
but track, nobody showed up to track meets. I mean, it was kind of isolated. So that's when I began to make my mark running track, and I ran track all over Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, and I became a kind of a track star. And I was in the relays around KU relays and the college relays. They had a junior college section in the big relays, and I ran in the junior college section in all the big relays and stuff. And I ran the dashes and the broad jump and the low hurdles and all the relays and stuff like that. And I found out that the only thing white people will accept is excellence. If you can
That's true for all people.
Beat them at their own game, then they back off. You know what I mean? And I keep telling you, well, you're not one of them. And that's all my life has been. You're really not one of them. You're one of us. And the only reason they were saying that because I figured out what the game was, and I just played their game the way they created it.
That's Did you get any state records? Did you break any state records? And also, did Jesse Owens, the old track star that ran in the Munich or the Berlin Olympics, did he have any effect on your track aspirations?
No. My big aspiration was my dad. My dad was played for the Kansas City Monarchs. He played baseball. He's on the Kansas City Monarchs baseball team, and so I was a bat boy for the Monarchs when Jackie Robinson was there. So
wow.
My dad used to beat Jesse Owens after the Olympics. They set up a 7th inning stretch. And that's when they stopped playing baseball, and they brought. It was kind of a circus kind of atmosphere. They brought events at the 7th inning of each one of the baseball games, and Jesse Owens was an Olympic champion. And my dad beat him over and over again with my dad wearing his baseball uniform and Jesse Owens wearing his track uniform. I watched that. That's not bullshit. That's real. I've seen it.
That's amazing. Your daddy outran Jesse Owens?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your dad actually outran Jesse Owens?
Yeah, well, a lot of Josh Gibson did. There was a lot of the black baseball players who were, incredible runners and stuff. And, Jesse was, Jesse was tall and could run. I mean, he set records and did all these wonderful things, but there are a lot of black athletes that, if you think of Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and all these guys that my dad played with, these guys were incredible baseball players, but they could run their butts off. But none of them went to college. Some of them did. My dad never got out of high school. He went to the 10th grade in high school, dropped out to play baseball.
Oh, wow.
And so my dad was a quarterback for Summer High School in the 10th grade, and they built the track team around him. But he left home to play baseball at 16 years old. And he dropped out tail end of the 10th grade and played baseball for making. Could you hold the line just a minute? Hold on.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead. But yeah, so back in the day, you had all kind of black athletes that never had an opportunity because they couldn't get in college, and all that kind of stuff because they didn't have high school educations. And so, Jesse Owens was lucky enough to be able to go to college and run for a college track team, and he became a star. But any of these guys could have done the same thing.
Now, the transition from you going from a student to the military, did you have like your senator or your state representative or maybe your local governor or something or a mayor write you a letter for the military to help you accelerate to becoming an officer?
No. What ended up happening, and the way I got it, I had no intention of going to the military, by the way. But I grew. I lived on a farm out on the edge of Kansas City, Kansas, and I could walk to the Fairfax airport every day. And so from the time I was 2, 3 years old, I was at the airport every single day of my growing up. Some part of that day was spent at the airport, and I became I became the little mascot, a little black kid from this farm there every day, and so they began to give me jobs. And my jobs were cleaning out airplanes after they'd been on these trips. Well, there was no war, so all the flying that was done out of Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri were hunters going to Colorado and Wyoming hunting, hunting deer and they had, the various hunting seasons.
Yes.
And what they would do, they would dress these animals there sometime, and then bring it back, and there's blood all over the place between the beer bottles and the blood, and they'd give me a nickel or a dime to clean out these airplanes, and that's how this whole flying thing got started. And by the time I was 9 or 10, I just told I didn't want the money anymore. I said I wanted to fly.
Yes.
And so I was hanging out in the maintenance hangars, handing these mechanics their wrenches, and I just became a part of the fixture there. And so I got interested in flying, and my mom got me a library card when I was 4, and I was at the library, and I started going to school when I was 2, by the way, and I became the class artist when I was 2 years old in preschool, and they just discovered that I could do art, and they didn't know, nobody knew where that came from, so I became the class artist through preschool, kindergarten, and by the time I got to high school, I was the school artist, and at 14, I opened up a sign shop in Kansas City, Kansas, and I had all the churches and the stores and the bars and the barbershops, and I did signage. And my dad built a studio in the back of my house because he got tired of me messing the house up with all my paintings and stuff. And so I started studying art at the library, and I did my first oil painting when I was 8 years old. I was copying out of these books, this Renaissance art out of the books, and I started copying these paintings, and I was a school artist in high school, and I had won the first 3 ribbons in the Kansas State Art Contest for the whole state of Kansas, and and nobody had ever won the first 3 ribbons before, and if these guys had looked at the encyclopedia, but they would have seen that I copied all this stuff.
But as an artist, even copying it is hard.
Well, I was a kid, you know what I mean? I didn't know about copyrights at the time. And, but anyway, the nuns took it over to the Kansas City Art Institute. And they gave me a scholarship, a full scholarship, I would have been the first black painter at Kansas City Art Institute. They never had a black student there before, and I said, yeah, this is cool. I'm going to be an artist.
That's awesome.
And my old man had set me down, and he thought it was cute for me, but to build that art studio in the back of the house, because I bought my first car when I was 14 years old from my art income, and now I've got a car, and I got a motor scooter. Later on, I started building hot rods and stuff on the side and all that stuff,
Wow.
And my old man set me down, and I would take these cars and I'd take them apart and spread them all over the goddamn yard and rebuild them and build new carburetors. And I got hooked up with some mechanic guy, and I was putting larger bores in the carburetors and stuff, and boring the pistons and getting larger pistons, maybe 34 Fords and stuff. And so I was running around town, and the girls loved it, man. They could ride in my hot rod. This is cool stuff. But my old man sent me down and said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to be an artist. And I got all the business in the Kansas City, Kansas, all the churches, I was making money and doing real well. And he said, "You're not going to be an artist. You're going to engineering school." And and I'm going, what the hell? What's an engineer? What do they do? And my first, that was a train that went right on the top of the north end of our property. And I thought he was talking about he wanted me to drive a train. So they're a train engineer. And that was the only engineer that I'd ever heard of,
Right.
And I said, "You got to be crazy. I'm not going to drive no train." And he looked at me and said, "He's a boy, slap you silly. What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, what do they do? I mean, what do engineers do?" And he said, "All you need to know is they make money. That's all you need to know."
Exactly.
So you go, and that's what I did. But I was going to slick him because I started reading about these engineers, and I found out that architectural engineers draw. And so I changed. I said, "Okay, I'll make my major architectural engineering, and because I could draw pictures and build houses, design houses and buildings."
Yes.
And so I said, "Okay, I'll do that." But going back to the library, in 1941, the war started, and they had put in the library 7 books. There was Army Air Corps training manuals.
Yes.
There were 7 of them, and I didn't know till later that those were the official training manuals for going to pilot training. And so since I was about 9 or 10, each chapter has a test on the back end of the chapter, and I've been taking these things, but it was a hobby of mine more than anything else, and they had to do with me being around those airplanes at the airport. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I didn't picture myself as flying an airplane or being a pilot because all those guys were white guys. I mean, I didn't even, I didn't know blacks could fly airplanes.
Exactly.
And no, I'm serious. I had never heard of the Tuskegee Airmen. I didn't know any of that.
Wow. And
so anyway, I was taking these tests at the end of each one of these chapters, and I've been doing it, just in my spare time. And at the end of each chapter, they have a test on the chapter, and I would take them, and then they have the answers in the back of the manuals. And so I've been taking these things and studying the tests and all that kind of, never thinking anything about it. And I had 2 paper routes. When I was 9, my mom told me that I was been sitting around my ass too long. I needed a job, so she went out and got me 2 paper routes. I was throwing the Kansas City, Kansas, and the Kansas City Call, and I had a white newspaper and a black newspaper, but that only took a couple hours, an hour and a half of my day. So I was throwing papers, and I was in college studying to be this architectural engineer with no engineering background in high school at all, by the way. And on the top of the fold in the Kansas City Call newspaper was a photograph of Dayton Ragland. And he was a jet pilot standing on the wing of an F-86 Sabre jet, and he had been shot down in Korea.
Yes.
And I said, "I'll be damned." And I said the N-word. That niggas fly now. And so, man, I looked at that thing. I couldn't wait to get down to the recruiting office. So, and it was just total out of absolute curiosity. They let black folks fly airplanes. And I went down to the recruiting office on Minnesota Avenue, and the guy kicked me out. "Get the hell out of here, boy." I said, "I want to fly." And he said, "Get out of here." And I stuttered really, really bad. And I'm only 5'4", and I was really short at the time. It's the first of all, you're too damn short and you stutter, so get out of here. And so I said, screw that. So I wrote to Pentagon. I sat down and wrote a letter to the Pentagon. And I says, "I want to fly airplanes. And I noticed that y'all letting Negroes fly." And I got a letter back about a week later. And lo and behold, they said, "We want you. And we're going to send a team to your college." I was going to Kansas City, Kansas Junior College on State Avenue over there in Kansas City, Kansas. And they sent a team of people, of guys out there, because I was the first one in line. And they give you an eye test and a hearing test.
Right.
And, that's just the beginning of it.
A whole work.
I was first one in line, and I never thought for a minute. I mean, I really didn't think that this thing was going to work out. Well, next thing you know, the team left, and I got a letter in the mail saying you've been chosen to go to Denver, Colorado to take a test for pilot training.
Yes.
And I was 18 years old, and next thing you know, I got on a train, and I was in Denver. Got into the testing room. Test was 2.5 hours. I opened the test thing, and I started taking the first section. And I said, "Damn, I've been there before." And lo and behold, it was exactly the same test at the end of the chapters of each one of these books I've been reading for years. Right. And I finished the test in about 25 minutes. And I took it up to this guy up front, and he says, "Too hard for you, huh?" I said, "No, I might have missed one or two. I'm not sure." And the guy looked at me, "Yeah, right." And they had this template that they put over it, And I said, "Damn, you're a genius." He called my mom. He called my mother. He called my school. And told them, "This boy's a genius. We better get him." And next thing you know, I got another letter in the mail saying you've been accepted for a class in December. And they never knew I stuttered because I never said a damn word. No oral.
Kept your mouth
anything.
Shut. Kept your mouth shut.
So yeah.
I said, you kept your mouth shut and you kept your cover. And
yeah, I know. I started really bad. So now I got this problem. And the good news is that in the first section, you're a lower classman, and you're not supposed to say a damn word, right?
Right.
So that was great for me. I didn't have to talk, And so finally, when we got to pre-flight training, now I gotta go public. Everybody thought that the guy's just really quiet. I mean, the guy don't say nothing. I mean, he aces all the tests and he does real. And I was a class officer, but everything was just written down pretty much. You didn't have to say much, you know what I mean? In pre-flight training, I was elected the number 2 guy in the class, and I was and white guys. There was these white folks would tell you and sit you down. So first of all, you're really a brilliant guy. Okay, now your problem is you're black and you're short. So we cannot put you in leadership. You can be number 2, you can be number 3, but we can't put you on the top. Also, you deserve to be there. And I found that when I went to boot camp, because I decided I didn't want to wait till December for my pilot training class. So I just joined the Air Force early and went to boot camp because I didn't know a damn thing about the military. And I did, they had all my, I graduated from junior college at the time. They had my transcripts and they had all of my, athletics and running track and playing football. They had all that stuff. And Sergeant Davis, the guy calls me in his office, said, "Man, you're way ahead of all these other guys, but we cannot put you in charge of these people because they won't follow you because you're black and you're too short." And so he told me, I'm gonna find the tallest guy. He'll probably be a dumb shit, but he'll be your Edgar Bergen and his dummies back in the day. He had his dummy sitting on the guy's lap, and he stuck his hand inside him and moved him around. That was my role, to stick this white boy and show him what to do, and let him take credit for shit that I was telling him to do. But I told myself how not to stutter. They have this thing where you got to practice Morse code, and you go in this room and you put earphones on and all that kind of stuff. But you're supposed to be studying Morse code. But what I was doing, I was recording myself and trying to figure out what letters could I not say? You know, that on soft letters you can't say, and if the letter is a hard letter, you can generally start a sentence. If the letter is a hard letter, I couldn't say my first name because E is, I couldn't get an E out, so I couldn't say my first name. But I could say my last name because it was D.
Right.
As a hard letter. So I would say, David, what's your name? And I'd say, Dwight. And then once I got it rolling, but is B. I could say that, but, and I'd say Dwight, but my first name is Ed. but anyway, but that's how I got into the military. And then I was an officer all the way through pilot training. By the time I got to upper class, and there was only one guy. I was a 4 stripes on the epaulet. There was only one guy ahead of me, and he was the flight commander. And I've always been the number 2 guy in these deals. And but I was there in leadership, and I learned how they did things. And I practiced it. After I got to be a pilot, I started training other pilots. Went to instructor school, and now I'm training other kids how to fly. And I learned a lot about flying by training these kids. You know, you learn more than you teach them.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So everywhere I went, I was a problem solver. I mean, everywhere I went, I got promoted, and I was on the wing staff. And when the president was looking for an astronaut, I went on and finished my aeronautical engineering degree at Arizona State. I was stationed there, so I finished my degree at Arizona State and graduated cum laude in an engineering degree with no background in engineering at all. But I studied hard and got they later gave me an honorary doctorate from Arizona State and everything. But anyway, that's how I was when the president was looking for a black astronaut. It turns out that I was one of the few people that had all the qualifications to be an entry-level astronaut, and we only had 125 black pilots in the entire world. And then you had to have an engineering degree. You had to have a lot of flying time, which I did. Because a flight instructor, you get a lot of flying time, but then. I flew combat over and flew alert by that. Wasn't in combat in Korea, but I had a mission over there. We were flying with a nuclear mission, so I was over in Japan for a couple of years doing that, and then I came back and I started working on my master's degree after they sent me back to the States and stuff. And I was always on the wing staff in a high position. Mainly because of my record and everything. So when the president was looking for this astronaut, my card fell out because I was the only one that had all 4 of the requirements. Had to have an engineering degree, and you had to be under 30, which eliminated all the Tuskegee Airmen. These guys were 35 and 40. You know what I mean? Because they were 10 years older than I was, pretty much. But anyway, that's how it all happened, and then the rest is history. Because once I got into the space program, there was a whole segment of Congress and the Senate that didn't want me there, mainly because they thought they were going to lose tax money because they had spent $10-12 million promoting the first 7 astronauts to make these guys heroes, and that's the only way to get the money from the public. They increased taxes for NASA. These guys had to be heroes. They had to be Superman, and the American public say, "Yeah, give them all the money they need, because we don't want them hurt and all that bullshit and stuff." So me coming along, if I could do it, then these guys weren't heroes, right? In the eyes of an American voter, what? If a brother or a woman could do it, these guys are just regular guys. There's no hero stuff going on there. And that was what. But Kennedy was trying to force it, but he ended up getting killed, and that's what happened to me in the program. He got killed, and he was my sponsor, and then President Johnson, comes along, and he told me he wanted to have his own black astronaut. He didn't want me because I was a Kennedy boy. So he asked, would I work with him on finding my replacement? And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. He said, but they promised me a space mission. You're going into space. I don't have to worry about that. But I got to have my guy. And I mean, he's got to be a guy that I appointed to go into space. And because Bob got killed in training, they went to the same training I did. I had gone through the training, astronauts training 2 years before, and I had graduated from the training, and I was just waiting for a space mission. And then Bob didn't quite finish the program because he got killed on one of the training missions.
I got two questions for you, Edward.
Yeah.
First one, did you know Major Robert Henry Lawrence Jr.?
No, I never met him. I know his wife and his family after he got killed, but I never met him.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you possibly knew. And secondly, during your operational years, when you were on deck, did you ever observe UFOs?
Did I observe what?
Did you ever observe UFOs? See any aliens activity?
No. I kept looking for them, dude. I haven't seen no. I haven't seen no UFOs. No. I have talked to people, other pilots that said that they did see UFOs, but personally, I never saw any UFOs. Okay. I ended up with 9,000 hours of flying time. Flew tons of different. I flew 29 different airplanes and all kind of different altitudes, all around the world, everything, and I have never seen a UFO. Okay.
You've never seen anything like? I don't know how much night flying you did, but at night, you remember during World War II, they used to call the U.S. pilots used to call foo fighters. They were like anomalies that we would see. You never saw a foo fighter or none of that?
No. I was either lucky or I wasn't looking for it.
I think you were lucky, sir. I think you were lucky. I mean, blessed. Because what I'm hearing from your story is that you were always able to seize the opportunity because you were prepared. You were in those books. You were reading. You was going to the library. You was doing stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what I give a lot of speeches, and that's the theme of every speech that I give, and it has to do with do it or not. You got to keep your options open. You know what I mean? And I wasn't afraid to tackle anything. I went through high school. I took art for 4 years in high school. Okay, I never took physics. I never took chemistry. I never took biology. I never took any hardly any math. And I graduated from high school. And when I told this guy that I want to be an engineer, he laughed at me. He said, "No, you're going to have to go into liberal arts because you don't have a background to be an engineer." And I told him, I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "I'm going to look around, and I'm going to find me a college that'll let me in there." And I kept looking around, and I found Donnelly College over there in Kansas City, Kansas. And I said, "I want to take college math, college chemistry, physics. I want to take everything that I didn't get in high school." And I told this guy at the engineering school, I said, "If I get anything less than a B when I come, if I come back here, if I get anything less than a B, you can kick me out of the engineering school." And so what I did, I took about 18 hours per semester, and I worked my butt off. And my deal that I did was, for instance, if I was in a chemistry class or an engineering dynamics class, I go to the library and I'd ask the librarian, I said, "I need to get the books of the five top chemical engineers." And as well, and he'd give me a list, and I'd take these things down. Now, if you're studying chemical engineering, again, at the end of every one of these chapters, or tests, damn it. And so I would go through each one of these chapters, and I would go for each 5 of these guys because they all approach problems differently. None of the 5 of these guys ever approached an engineering problem the same, and I was shocked at that. I thought that wait a minute, so there's more solutions to our problems than just one.
Right.
And by the time I got to go through them books, man, I was getting A's and B's because a lot of the instructors, a lot of the instructors get their questions out of these same books for your test.
So you know the books, you know the answer. Oh wow! Oh wow! And they're like, "You're a genius."
So I would take every one of these tests that these guys gave at the end of the chapter because it would always be a problem. You solve this problem. You have to do everything in the chapter to solve that problem. And then they would go through how they solved it. And lo and behold, man, I went through every one of the damn things, and I found out that these professors, why should they create tests when they can go to a book and get some tests? That's what they did. And lo and behold, I was getting A's and B's in engineering dynamics, and physical chemistry, and all. But anyway.
I got another question from the chat room. This is from Brother David. Asked if he knows about underground bases, DUMS, D period, U period, M period, B period, S period. And this is pertaining to Admiral Byrd's Antarctica. Basically information. So, without, any type of national secrets or anything like that could get you in trouble. Could you speak on underground bases?
Wait a minute. I don't understand the question. Underground what? What do you mean?
Admiral Byrd, when he went to the Antarctica, he suggested that there might be underground bases that, basically, I guess the old Nazis were holed up in down there in Antarctica and throughout the world.
Yeah. And at that part, but I didn't learn much of that because after I got into the space program, what ended up happening, kind of find out that we didn't invent our space program. We didn't invent any of this stuff.
Warner von Braun.
At the end of the war, the Germans had already done space satellites. They had already done spaceships. The Germans had already designed space suits, space helmets, space gloves, and space boots. At the end of the war, what ended up happening is that it was a big with Russia, because Russia was closing in on Germany from the east.
Right.
And we were coming in from the west, okay? And the big fight was over there, who was going to get access to all the space stuff. So the compromise was, we'll give the Russians all the hardware, and we'll take all the engineers that designed it. So 500 things, Carl Long things of hardware went straight into Russia. That's why they went to space before we did, because they had the hardware.
Wow.
And so what America did was get the engineers. They brought 5,000 engineers over here they're all Nazis now, man, and spread them out across the United States of America. They don't want them all in one place.
Operation Paper.
Because of obvious reasons, okay?
Right.
And so, as a matter of fact, Dr. Wexler was a Nazi when I was working on my master's in nuclear engineering. Dr. Wexler, the Nazi, was one of my advisors. And we used to sit down and he used to tell me stories. Yeah. And so all these guys were former Nazis, okay? Von Braun was the chief guy of the whole space program over there.
Right.
And that's why they picked Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama is not on the mainstream. Think about it. If they didn't go to Miami, Florida, all these big places, they found a little dinky town in Alabama to start the space program, which was off the beaten path, because they didn't want anybody to know that this whole goddamn thing was being run by Nazis.
Wow.
And that's what America did. So everything that we got, our space suits, because they had to go back and redesign them, but they took all the plans with them too. Because when they hired the Nazi guys, the Russians got the hardware, we got the guys plus their plans. Okay, right. And so as a result of that, and so I was fascinated. So I got really fascinated with Germany and Hitler, because I could not imagine how this guy that was a corporal in World War I could get a whole damn nation to adore him and follow him.
It's called the Thule Society, and
that was going to destroy their country. I mean, how could this? I mean, this guy was a corporal. The guy, and he's a failed artist. This guy wanted to be an artist,
right?
And he washed out of art school, and went into the military, and he got out of the military, and then he got to be a rabble rouser and stuff like that, and he got upset because of the way Germany was being treated after the war, Versailles Treaty,
right,
and everything, So and he blamed it on the Jews, but he began to learn, from some of his other prison buddies and the revolutionaries that in order to have a revolution, you got to start. If you got, let's say you got a population of 100 million people, let's say, okay.
Right.
Well, and you got to convince 100 million people to follow you, okay. Now, in that 100 million people, you'll have minorities in there, okay. So if you're in Europe, obviously the minorities in Europe are white, but they had to get somebody to hate, and they hated the Jews, and so Hitler had to come to the table with a hate program, okay. And using this hate program, he got the rest of these white people to follow him into hating somebody who was a minority. And so the white people, and he told them, they're taking your jobs, they control all the money, all of these things. And these regular white folks said, yeah, and this is crazy, because how can a minority overtake a majority by taking their jobs? Because if a guy or the minority, they can't take all the minority jobs because that's not enough to go around.
Right.
And so now you come along with this god awful person in the White House right now, the Hitler pattern, or you can take that template and superimpose it right over the top of Hitler.
Wow. And
the minorities were brown immigrants from Mexico. So he had to convince all those black, all those brown, all those white people, regular white guys, that they couldn't get a job because they didn't go to school, right?
Yeah, they're
dumb as hell. They're pissed off about just life, And this guy goes and tells them, "Hey, guy, you need to hate on them brown people because they're immigrants and they got your jobs, and they can't have they can't have black people in America are 13% of the population." And I give a lot of speeches around. Black people are 13%, and all of the white people say that black people are going to take our jobs. Yeah. Well, and I tell them, there ain't enough of us to go around. We're only 13% of the population. We cannot take 87% of the jobs because we only represent 13% of the population. And then you bring it down some more of the 13%, only about 7 or 8% of us are working. Right. And so how can 7% of the population who are working are going to take the jobs of 200 million people, white people who have jobs? I just tell them there ain't enough of us to go around, so we can't be taking your jobs. And so this whole thing about the underground, I'm a Nazi watcher, I'm a Nazi historian, and they're finding things to this day all over England. I just looked at one last night in Holland, where there was the Nazis had built underground cities.
Right, they did.
In England, all over, yes, man.
Yes.
Even in some of the island nations, they went underground. Yeah.
That's what I said in the beginning.
Yes.
Even though Admiral Byrd went down to Antarctica and the big base down there, but they had bases all over, from the Black Forest down in Bulgaria to Argentina, over in South Africa, and some of the other German colonies in Kemet.
Right.
The thing I want to ask you, and this is the most important thing, do you see, is there still a working Nazi cabal in our military and government agencies?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah. And what's bad about it is our military is not going to, and it at least was before Trump got in office, they knew it was there, and they didn't know how to fight it. Think about
Right.
that. What do we take and throw all these guys out and have no army, or what? Or do we take and train these guys and turn their heads? You know what I mean? Well,
Re-educate.
if you're a military instructor, and these guys, that there's another factor here that you have to consider here. Okay, and you got to go back to slavery.
Oh.
Okay, at the end of slavery, think about what happened. You got all these white boys. They ain't got nothing to do, and the North tried to destroy the South.
Yep.
So there were no jobs because the slaves were free, and the slaves fled north. So now you got all these white boys down there going, "What in the world do we do?" And so what they did, the answer to that was to fill up West Point, to fill up the Virginia Military Academy,
Yes.
all over the South, and that's where all the white boys went because they didn't have no jobs. And they went into these military academies. They graduated from a military academy, and he went into the military.
That's absolutely
Or
right.
the alternative were politics. When I went into the space program, every committee in the House and the Senate was headed by a Southerner. So that became the go-to place. When you graduated from college, you went into either the military or you went into politics. So now our politics, all the generals up there are all from the South.
Oh no!
Almost every one of them.
You know what means?
What would a bright white boy want to go to the military for? I mean, he's not making money. Come on, give me a break. Say about it. You're from Cleveland or from Chicago, Massachusetts. What the hell you want to go to the military for? You go out and make me some money. Okay. And so now you get these guys from the South. They had destroyed their factory infrastructure. There's no building of crap in the South. So that when the space program came along, where did they put all the manufacturing and all the space stuff?
Down in Tennessee.
The South.
This down in Tennessee. Okay. In fact, that one during the Manhattan Project, everyone knows about Chicago, but no one knows about that little small town in Tennessee that they had this. They built a computer and then they built some centrifuges down there to enrich the uranium. See, we don't know about these things because why? Because people don't want to read. They don't want to get down there in no books that tells you all the damn secrets. Right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, these are some of the things that I ended up learning. As you go through the process, you interact and even when I was in the military, especially when I got to the space program, because I was being entertained by all these senators. Took me to their houses, man. I met presidents. I was Bobby Kennedy's campaign, one of Bobby Kennedy's campaign managers out here when he ran for president. I was Ted Kennedy operative out here, and I got in, and they would take me when I'd go to D.C. I'd be their guest. I was, and I was invited to all these. Back in the day, you could go to Strom Thurmond's house because they talked to each other.
Wow.
Even though they got on the Senate floor and called each other all kind of names, when they would play golf together.
Right.
But they don't do that anymore. But back in the day, they did. And so you end up learning, a whole bunch of stuff, about Republicans and how they act when they're not being Republicans.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so you end up learning, about how governmental systems work. Yeah, you know
politics.
what I mean. So and we traveled all over the world, and you get to meet all these prime ministers and all that kind of stuff, and you find out that they're regular people, and they're different when they're leading versus when they're socializing,
Right.
And then I got to meet all the entertainment. I was hanging out with all the entertainers, and I was on the A list out in Hollywood, and I was hanging out with all these guys, and NBA guys, Magic, and I was later on selling art to these guys, I mean, I knew all these folks, man. Quincy Jones and Miles Davis. I mean, you go down to this Dizzy. I was on the road with Dizzy for years, and and I got to meet this whole cross section of the people that we admire and who lead our country. You know what I'm saying? And so you begin to start fitting these puzzles together about how the whole puzzle system works, and then you dig into the history of it, and you say to yourself that Donald Trump read every book on Hitler, and he's looked at every video on Hitler you can imagine,
right?
Because he is just reenacting every single thing Hitler did, and the main thing was confusion.
Yes.
Keep everything roiled up. Confusion. Stay on people's minds. Confusion. Start shit. Do this. Do that. And Hitler was a master at starting confusion and keeping the German people all screwed up about, sitting up telling lies about what other people did, what other countries did, and we're going to be the great race. And this is going to be the 1,000-year regime where we're going to take over the whole world, and all of them are going to be servants to us, and have these people believe that. Trump has a third of our population believing that, thinking that he's the savior, man. But anyway, I gotta get off the air. I've been talking too much.
I got one last question before you go, Ed, please. One last question. This is from Brother K Jr. Earlier, he said for success, he identified their weak points at the time.
Mm-hmm.
During the first part of the conversation, you said that you identified their weak points for your personal success.
Yeah.
And he's asking,
right.
What were the top weak point areas that you identified?
Well, I kind of find that. One main thing is that, and my dad told me this, and it could be a blanket over the smaller parts of all this stuff. Is that the white man doesn't understand anything but the competence. I mean that he might get upset about it in the beginning, but then he gets his mind resolved to it. That if you understand how he thinks, how white men think, and I found out that if you're competent enough to let him know that you know as much as he does, and sometimes on the beginning of it, you become a smart ass. He thinks he knows, but he only knows the top part of the subject. He only knows the title and that little subtitle. Mm-hmm. But if you let him know that you know the body of the work, then all of a sudden this guy comes to a rationalization, and he rationalizes this. Like I said before, he said, there's something special about this man, and I can't figure it out, but I'm going to roll with this thing for a while, okay? And that's what happened to me all through this thing. I mean, I've convinced these people, and I provided the proper amount of respect to them. I wasn't a smart ass guy, but I let them know that I knew as much as they did about what we were doing. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. Like when I went into SAC, I was a fighter pilot guy, and they assigned me to a SAC unit. And SAC guys think differently. They think more, and that's why they call it the Strategic Air Command.
Yes.
Because when you're in fighters, it's a tactical air command. That means you're doing short things, short stories, short fights, short flights, short fights, short this, short that. You're on the front line. Strategically, you got to think longer, okay? And so when you're hanging around with these strategic thinkers, these guys think differently. They think slower. They're not as quick on the draw, but they think slower, and you got to stay with it, because if you're a tactical guy, you got to think with it, because that guy's thinking on the long term. What's going to happen if we bomb that thing and the bomb don't go right? Versus and the long-term planning in strategic warfare is you're finding out what's going to be the aftermath and what are going to be the repercussions. Should we bomb that particular city versus the other city? And so you end up thinking the long game. Right. And so once you can encourage him, if you will, to work with you. But you got to let him know that you've been doing homework. And that's it. That's the whole thing right there. You gotta let these white folks know you know what you're doing. I mean, I get the same thing with art. I'm here, and I mean, I was one of the largest general contractor real estate developers in Denver, Colorado one time before I became an artist.
Wow.
And there's not very many artists that don't know anything about building, and that's why I've done 129 memorials around the country because I know how to build things. And I get into the granite, I get into the foundations, I get into the structure. The sculptures got to be there for the next 100 years. I have to get into all of that kind of stuff. Okay.
Right.
And so as a result of that, I have to think long term, and I can't let a short term thing to make me happy, get me off track. And but to get back to your original question about is there 10 weak points, and the answer is whatever you're doing, I don't give a damn what it is. It could be in the acting world, it could be in the art world, it could be in the building world, it could be in the law world. You got to know and spend a hell of a lot of time understanding the subject and going in there when you sit down and talk to these white people, go in there and let them know that you don't know what you're doing.
That's right.
And I'll give you an example, real quick. Like, they built the Martin Luther King Memorial on the Mall, right?
Right.
The big one, right?
Right.
I was the original artist for that.
Whoa! Get out of here!
And I designed that, and I'm dealing with these brothers, okay. And these brothers don't know shit about, excuse my friend, they don't know nothing about contracting, structures, weights, bearings, nothing. And so I wrote them, what ended up happening was the Chinese guy, they ended up doing it, was working for me. He was in this studio in Denver, Colorado. The man was working for me. And the Chinese government comes along, right? And they decided they want to choose this guy to work under me because there was a rumbling that the Chinese government would come up with some money if they appointed a Chinese sculptor.
Oh.
Okay. So now I'm the head sculptor, right? The Chinese government said, no, we'll give you a whole lots of money. He is not going to be working for no nigger. Our artist is not going to be working. Period.
Hold up.
So if you make him the top guy, then we'll work with you.
Oh my God!
And
so they were using
and the brothers
racial economy.
And the brothers, wait a minute, and the brothers folded and sent me down the river, man. I ended up resigning before they make that sick because I wrote them along a letter of resignation. But I had presented these brothers with a 44-page engineering report on how to put that sculpture together. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you look at that sculpture there, that sculpture is solid granite, all the way from 30 feet tall, a 3-story high sculpture it's all solid granite on the inside as well as the outside. It's done in blocks. Okay. And they carved it, and then they had to slice this thing up into pieces, bring it over here and put it back together. Correct. Right. I'd come up with a plan that you'd be able to build a stainless steel structure inside, and then put a veneer of the same blocks of granite, but you'd only use, and it would weigh 1/10 of what it weighs now, right? Because it's sitting on a stainless steel grid that's drilled down the bedrock, and then you put these layers of sculpture on top, and you put them together piece by piece. Because when you go look at it, it's all done in little pieces, right?
Right.
But they said no. Now you go look at it now. Get a plane and go up there. The thing is falling apart because the granite is cracking and falling apart. The whole damn thing is splitting apart.
It's disintegrating. People don't understand. Marble, travertine, and granite, these natural stones, they're really kind of porous, and they're really kind of weak stone. They're not like
Well, in 30, 40 years, that sculpture's not going to be there. You know that. Because granite melts. I tried to get them to do him in bronze and then support it with granite. And they said, no, Dwight, you don't know what you're talking about. And, I spent most of my art career replacing melted granite, with bronze sculptures that were granite because they've been there 30, 40 years. And the automobile exhaust melts granite. And car gases in the atmosphere melts granite. And, I try to explain that to the brothers. And they said, they called me the N-word. What are you talking, man? You don't know what you're talking about. Man, you don't know. I said, fine, that's what you guys want to do, go ahead. But because they had to replace a granite sculpture of the guy who won the grant. That's not far from the Vietnam Memorial. They had Park Service covered up with trees because it had melted. It didn't have face anymore. Now, true enough, it was put there 30 years ago, right?
Right.
But it melted, so they had to take it down. Because they built a forest around it so people couldn't see it.
Cover up their mistakes.
I'm serious. Yeah, they did. And then they got the Vietnam Women's Memorial is near there, okay? But not too far from walking distance was a sculpture that it was granite that had melted.
Wow.
And so King is going to end up melting, and I think it's going to take time, but it's probably going to crack up and fall apart, mainly because of the weight above where it's resting on the concrete there. I mean, it's got pylons. It's supposed to go down to bedrock. Maybe they go down to bedrock. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But they built it and they did the pylons, I'm sure, and put all this granite on top of these pylons. That whole thing is a basin.
Yeah.
The Potomac, that's a big basin. And I don't know how far bedrock goes down. But anyway,
it's
guys,
a huge geographical.
I do have to run.
Well, thank you, brother. I just want to say thank you. And when you have more time, I would totally love to have you back on the show again.
Gotcha, man.
All right, brother.
Okay, you guys have a good one. We'll be talking.
All right, thank you, Ed.
Bye. Okay, see you.
Wow, that was a great interview, Yao. I'm going to end this broadcast. I'm going to call Dr. Short up, and I might be coming back with another broadcast like in 2 and 2. All right. So as always, live your life with integrity, without hate, envy, or greed. Please, brothers and sisters, let's try to be kinder to each other. Peace and power, unity and victory, dignity and respect, liberation. I'm out. Peace.